In a world where the thrill of adventure often comes with its own risks, there are stories that remind us just how fragile life can be. Today, we dive into some of the most gripping and tragic diving accidents in recent history. Stories of human courage, costly mistakes, and the devastating consequences that followed. From deep, dark caves to murky lake beds, these divers faced environments where one wrong move could lead to disaster. On a serene summer day in 2021, the waters of Scapa Flow off the Orkney Islands in Scotland became the backdrop for a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. David Police, a 57-year-old diver from Chellaston, Derbyshire, was living his dream, exploring the wreck of the SMS Brahma, a German mine-layer cruiser scuttled during the aftermath of World War I. It was a kind of bucket list dive every experienced diver longs for, but what was meant to be an adventure turned into a nightmare. David had joined a group of friends for a week-long dive holiday, excited to explore the wreck of the Brahma, which rests at a depth of 36 meters on its starboard side. The wreck is popular with recreational divers, as it's largely intact. As a seasoned diver, David had undergone several training courses, preparing himself for the challenges of deep water exploration. However, as experienced as he was, a crucial mistake was made, one that would have dire consequences. On 27th of June 2021, David disappeared during a dive. His dive team, unaware of the danger unfolding, continued their search, but to no avail. The following day, a local diver found his body, face down and lifeless, approximately 20 meters from the wreck. A post-mortem confirmed the cause of death: drowning. An inquest at Derby Coroner's Court in September 2021 revealed a chilling detail. The equipment David had relied on during the dive had a fatal flaw. The wing inflator hose, which helps a diver control buoyancy, was disconnected when he entered the water. A dive expert confirmed that no mechanical defects were found on the gear itself, but the missing hose connection meant he could not regulate his buoyancy and descended uncontrollably. It was a moment that sealed his fate. Assistant Coroner Sophie Lomas, who oversaw the inquest, delivered a heart-wrenching conclusion. While she ruled that David's death was accidental, she stated that it could have been prevented if proper pre-dive safety checks had been conducted. Lomas explained that, had the hose been connected, David would have been able to control his buoyancy and prevent a rapid, uncontrollable descent. Unfortunately, the team was unable to act in time, as David was already too far gone by the time they realized something was wrong. It is unlikely his team members would have been able to do anything in the limited time available. The reality is, because the hose was not connected from the moment David entered the water, sadly, the outcome was set, Ms. Lomas told the court. The coroner's remarks went beyond just the specifics of this tragic incident. Lomas pointed to a troubling aspect of the diving community: complacency. She highlighted that experienced divers, like David, often performed fewer team checks, relying on their own knowledge and skills. This attitudinal shift, as she called it, led to the failure to conduct an essential check that would have saved his life. In a poignant message to the diving community, Lomas stressed the importance of personal and body checks, regardless of experience level. Carrying out personal and body checks can have a significant impact in terms of what follows, she said. It's not a gap in training or knowledge, but a simple often overlooked step that could make the difference between life and death. Had those checks happened, the wing inflator hose could have been noticed and corrected prior to his entry to the water. The death of David Police has reverberated through the diving world, leaving a somber reminder that no amount of experience can replace the importance of safety checks. It's a lesson that many will carry forward, ensuring that the next time they enter the water, they will do so with the knowledge that every check counts. On July 6, 2022, two experienced Polish divers, Krzysztof Balaki and Dominik Dubai, tragically lost their lives during a dive to the Le Polynesian wreck off Malta's coast. What began as an adventurous exploration turned into a deadly series of events where heroism, negligence, and a series of critical mistakes led to a fatal outcome. Krzysztof Balaki, a well-respected diver and instructor, had been diving with his dive club, Diving Explorers. Krzysztof organised diving trips to the erythral coast of Malta on several occasions. Known for his experience, leadership, and nickname Tato, meaning dad in Polish, Krzysztof was a mentor to many. Krzysztof was obviously a very experienced diver and instructor. Dominik, on the other hand, was a relatively new diver, about 2 years of diving, and was new to closed-circuit rebreather diving. On this fateful dive, he and Dominik encountered serious issues at 65 metres, far deeper than the 50 metres originally reported. Dominik, during the dive, experienced a closed-circuit rebreather malfunction, where his wing bladder was filling with air, which put him into rapid, uncontrollable ascent. It was well known and talked about in that group that in a situation like this, that it's better to have one person dead rather than two. But Krzysztof was a good person and would not be able to live if he had not attempted to save Dominik. He tried to help Dominik, but this put both of them into that tragic situation. Dominik panicked and froze, and unfortunately did not exhale out on his way up to the surface. Another diver, a part of the dive club, by the name of Veribek, told Times of Malta she was taking some footage of the dive when, at some point, her camera stopped working and the current was strong, so she resurfaced. As soon as I got on the boat, the two divers popped to the surface, she said. They were both conscious at that point, but it was clear that something was wrong. When they breached the surface, Dominik was already foaming and bleeding profusely from his mouth, which was due to his ruptured lungs. They had both skipped an hour of required decompression stops, which are critical from preventing decompression sickness. Krzysztof tried to help him, but knew there wasn't much he could do. He swam back to the chartered boat and got on and told them about the situation. He placed himself on oxygen and wanted to replace his diving tanks with new ones and jumped to do the decompression stop, but they stopped him from doing that. Eventually, the armed forces of Malta showed up and started to treat both of them and drive them to the shore towards the Mater Dei hospital, although the EMTs pretty much gave up on Dominik because he was estimated to have died within 30 minutes of him surfacing due to drowning. Krzysztof lost feelings in his legs on the way to the hospital in the ambulance. Krzysztof, who was conscious and alert initially, was taken to a hyperbaric chamber for treatment of decompression illness, and everyone thought he was going to be okay. Early signs indicated he might survive, but the situation quickly deteriorated. By 6:31 p.m, Krzysztof went into cardiac arrest. In a tragic twist, a critical error in the medical treatment that followed played a significant role in Krzysztof's death. The diving and hyperbaric medicine consultant, who was responsible for his care, left the hospital for an extended period to watch a soccer match and refused to answer his phone, leaving a junior doctor, still in training, to handle the diver's treatment. When Khrushchev's condition worsened, the junior doctor asked for help, but the request was ignored. By the time the consultant returned, Khrushchev's condition had worsened severely. The consultant had misdiagnosed the situation over the phone, initially suspecting oxygen toxicity rather than decompression illness. Equipment malfunctions, a miscalculation in Khrushchev's treatment, and a delay in responding to his worsening symptoms ultimately led to his death, just 38 minutes after the consultant's return. A judicial inquiry into this incident has led to startling conclusions. While the dive centre, Dive Shack Scuba School, was cleared of any negligence, the consultant could face criminal charges. The inquiry found that the consultant's absence during critical moments and reliance on an inadequately trained junior doctor contributed to Khrushchev's death. This tragic outcome may see the consultant facing charges of involuntary manslaughter, a punishment that could include up to 4 years in prison and a fine of £10,000. Krzysztof Balaki, a legend in the diving community, is remembered as a hero. Krzysztof's immediate response was heroic. Despite knowing the risks, that he would be sacrificing his own decompression time to help, he went back into the water, attempting to aid his struggling dive partner. His sacrifice to help a fellow diver ultimately cost him his life. Friends, colleagues, and fellow divers have all spoken of his unwavering dedication to the sport and his deep respect for those he mentored. He was more than an instructor. He was a father figure to many, a mentor, and a friend. As the diving community mourns, it's clear that this incident highlights the risks divers take, not just in the depths of the ocean, but in the hands of those tasked with saving them in times of crisis. The lessons learned here are stark. The importance of proper training, the necessity of timely medical intervention, and the critical role of responsibility when it comes to diving safety. Khrushchev's death and the mishandling of his treatment serves as a stark reminder that, in the world of diving, every second counts, and sometimes a single mistake can cost a life. In the eerie stillness of Norway's Plura cave system, one of the most experienced cave divers in the world met an untimely fate. Gerard Hyers, the general manager of Dive Right and a legend in the diving community, was a man who lived for the thrill of exploring the deepest, darkest caves beneath the surface. But on April the 3rd, 2023, during what was meant to be a routine checkup dive, tragedy struck, leaving the diving world stunned and heartbroken. Plura is not your average dive spot. It's the deepest cave in northern Europe and a bucket list location for cave divers. With its massive limestone and marble passages and crystal clear water that seems to stretch endlessly, it's a diver's dream. But don't be fooled by its beauty. Plura is no place for the faint of heart. The water here is freezing, ranging from 36 degrees Fahrenheit in winter to a slightly warmer 44 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. And navigating its twists and turns is not for beginners. Gerard was no beginner. He was a seasoned pro with 2 decades of diving experience. And yet, even the most experienced divers can't always predict what lies ahead. Gerard, along with 2 other divers, was on a checkup dive to ensure their gear was functioning properly before a deeper exploration the next day. The dive started like any other, with all equipment in good working order and the divers in high spirits. They descended to a depth of 34 meters, 110 feet, for the first half of their dive, enjoying the beautiful underwater world in the wedding chamber before taking a quick break. After a brief surface interval, they descended again, this time deeper into the cave. The logs show that everything was going smoothly at first, But that's when things took a tragic turn. At around 16 minutes into the second dive, Gerard's dive log suddenly showed a sharp descent from 25 metres to 29 metres in under 20 seconds. His fellow divers, who were in front of him, didn't notice anything unusual at first. But then, chaos struck. Gerard's dive buddy, Diver 1, turned to assist Diver 2 with a backup light when he saw Gerard's light flickering erratically. By the time Diver 1 reached Gerard, he was already in full convulsions. Gerard's rebreather loop was not in his mouth, but had been closed off, suggesting that he had attempted to bail out, but wasn't able to get his regulator in time. In the blink of an eye, Gerard was fighting for his life. Trapped underwater, his body seized by an unexplained medical event. Diver 1, determined to save his friend, tried desperately to secure Gerard's airway, but the seizures continued for several minutes. As Gerard's convulsions subsided, Diver 1 swam past him toward the exit, a harrowing 250-metre journey through dark, narrow passages. Gerard's condition was still dire as they neared the exit. Diver 2 was already alerting the surface, and help was on the way. But as they reached the surface, Gerard's fate had already been sealed. Despite immediate CPR and oxygen, the medical team couldn't revive him. 2 hours of frantic resuscitation efforts proved in vain. The diving community was quick to speculate on the cause of Gerard's seizure, with many wondering if it was oxygen toxicity, a common risk for rebreather divers. After all, rebreathers can malfunction, causing dangerous spikes in oxygen levels that could lead to seizures. However, the preliminary report from the Divers Alert Network, DAN, ruled out oxygen toxicity. The logs didn't show any dangerous oxygen spikes before the event. Instead, it seemed Gerard's tragic fate was due to a medical condition, one he had battled before. Gerard had suffered a similar seizure in 2023, and his family history pointed to rare, unexplained seizures, triggered by factors like stress, dehydration, and overexertion. The diving world was shocked to learn that despite Gerard being in excellent shape, these underlying health issues, coupled with a recent viral infection, may have contributed to his seizure underwater. For Gerard, the cave that had once been his sanctuary became his tomb. In a place where he had spent countless hours honing his skills and conquering the depths, it was a medical event, not equipment failure, that claimed his life. Gerard Hyre's death is a sobering reminder that even the most prepared divers can face dangers beyond their control. It also highlights the harsh reality of diving in extreme environments. What may seem like a routine dive can quickly turn into a fight for survival. The dive community will always remember Gerard Hyres for his passion and expertise, but his death also serves as a wake-up call. Divers must remain vigilant about their health, even if they feel fine, and understand the risks that come with diving in extreme conditions. Gerard's legacy lives on, and his story will undoubtedly inspire divers to dive deeper, both in the cave and in their own understanding of the hidden dangers that lie beneath the surface. In May 2023, 20-year-old Joe Anderson, a student at Bethel University, embarked on what was supposed to be a summer job, clearing underwater weeds at Lac Lavant, a recreational lake in Apple Valley, Minnesota. A seemingly simple task, right? Wrong. This tragic event would turn into one of the most catastrophic incidents in recent Minnesota history, leading to a devastating loss of life and an unprecedented fine for the company involved. Joe was hired by Your Lake Aquatic Plant Management, a company with a questionable track record when it comes to diver safety. Their website boasted photos of teens knee-deep in weed-infested waters, But behind the shiny images was a darker reality. The company's divers were barely trained, and Joe, fresh to the job, was about to learn just how dangerous this under-regulated industry really was. On May 21st, Joe and a team consisting of 5 other inexperienced divers descended into the near-zero visibility waters of Lac Levant, a lake plagued by dense weed growth. The water wasn't just murky, it was like diving in a soup of weeds, where you couldn't see your own hand in front of your face. Joe had nobody to help, no real visibility, and certainly no extensive training for what was about to unfold. The dive was simple enough. Clear the weeds at depths of around 3 to 5 meters or 10 to 15 feet. Following a group surface check and having given the OK sign, Joe descended with the other divers. However, something went terribly wrong when Joe failed to resurface with the group after their initial dive. Panic set in as his dive buddies realized they couldn't see his bubbles rising to the surface. They immediately went back down, searching frantically. When they found Joe, it was already too late. His regulator was out of his mouth, and he was lying unresponsive on the lakebed. The group pulled him to the surface, where they attempted CPR. Emergency services arrived quickly, and although Joe still had a faint pulse, he was severely hypothermic and unresponsive. He was stabilized and moved to an intensive care unit at a nearby hospital, and later transferred to another unit, but he had only low blood oxygen levels, sporadic brain activity, and fluid in his lungs, the latter described by his family as not lake water, but probably as a result of the trauma from the accident. Despite best efforts to save him, Joe passed away 3 days later, on 24th of May, in the hospital. But what exactly went wrong here? The investigation that followed exposed a chilling chain of negligence. It turns out Joe had never been trained in scuba diving before. According to Minnesota's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, Joe's training consisted of only 10 to 15 minutes from an employee who wasn't even certified to dive. One of the factors in the incident was that Joe's weight belt was on inside out, preventing him from releasing it. Not only was the company's approach to training and safety woefully inadequate, but there was also no supervisor present to oversee the dive and ensure safe practices. Joe's death wasn't just tragic, it was preventable. As the investigation revealed, the company had no safe practices manual, and its employees weren't trained in basic first aid or CPR. This lack of preparation proved fatal when Joe's team was forced to perform a high-stakes rescue with no clear plan or understanding of emergency procedures. And the consequences for your lake aquatic plant management were severe. OSHA hit the company with 5 willful violations, a designation that's only given when a company knows hazards exist but makes no effort to correct them. The total fines added up to a staggering $730,000, the largest workplace fine in Minnesota's history. But your lake wasn't backing down. They contested the citations, hoping to reduce their responsibility for Joe's death. This tragic incident wasn't just a wake-up call for the company, but for the entire diving community. It highlighted how inexperienced divers were being put in dangerous conditions without the training or support they need. It's a cautionary tale that shows the deadly consequences of cutting corners in a job that requires not only skill, but life-saving knowledge. And Joe wasn't the only one. Just the year before, another diver died under similar circumstances while working for another company, Dive Guys of Wayzata, at Lake Minnetonka. That company was also cited for safety violations, and the fine was reduced after appeal. But the question remains, how many more young lives will be at risk if these reckless practices continue unchecked? In the end, Joe's death wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a failure of a system that prioritizes profits over safety and it cost Joe Anderson his life. As we reflect on this tragedy, remember, no job, no matter how simple it seems, is worth risking your life for, especially when safety isn't a priority. Joe Anderson may have been just starting out in life, but his death should serve as a stark reminder that we must never forget the importance of proper training, supervision, and safety measures, especially when dealing with something as unpredictable and dangerous as diving. Diving is one of the most inspiring and challenging activities in the world, but as we've seen today, it carries inherent risks that demand preparation, caution, and respect for the underwater world. These tragic accidents remind us of the fine line between adventure and danger. This has been Gripping Horror. I hope to see you in the next one.